Good day, everyone. Today, we are going to discuss the act. This topic will be focusing on the following. First, feelings and moral decision making. Second, reason and impartiality as minimum requirement for morality. And third, moral courage.
Feelings as instinctive response to moral dilemmas. Some ethicists believe that ethics is also a matter of emotion. They hold that moral judgment at their base should also be emotional. For one thing, feelings or emotions are said to be judgments about the accomplishments of one's goals, as emotions can be rational, being based at least sometimes on good judgments about how well a circumstance or agent accomplishes appropriate objectives. Thus, many ethicists conclude that being good involves both thinking and feeling as people emotionally express their strong approval or disapproval of different acts.
Feeling as obstacles to make the right decisions. Feelings and emotions, however, can become the obstacles or impediment to becoming the ethicals. This is the case especially when the feelings rules in ethics are misinterpreted or exaggerated. They are the two famous feelings-based theories in ethics: subjectivism and emotivism. Subjectivism, it is the theory about the nature of moral judgment. It's the hold that the truth or first three or ethicals. Proposition is the defended on the feelings, attitude, or standard of a person or a group. It's the state that our moral judgment describe our personal feelings.
Whereas, emotivism is an improved version of subjectivism. This theory is developed by the American philosopher Charles L. Stevenson from 1909 to 1979. It states that moral judgments express positive or negative feelings. Moral judgments are not statements of fact, but are more expressions of the emotions of the speaker, since it is feeling-based. Emotivism claims that they have two entirely different purposes. First, emotivism is used as a means of influencing others' behavior. If someone says stealing is immoral, emotivism interprets it as an attempt to stop you from doing the act. That is more like a command. Second, emotivism is used to express the speaker's attitude accordingly, saying, "Fair play is good." It's not like saying, "I approve of fair play," but it's like saying, "Hooray for fair play."
Feelings can help in making the right decision. Subjective feelings sometimes matter when deciding between right and wrong. Emotion, like our love for our friends and families, are the crucial part of what gives life meaning and ought to play a guiding role in morality. Nonetheless, the feelings or emotion involved in moral thinking should be accrued on careful consideration of a full range of right goals and including a critics ones.
Reasons and impartiality defined. Humans have not only feelings but also reason, and reason plays a vital role in ethics. Moral truths are truths of reason. That is, a moral judgment is true if it is espoused by better reasons than the alternatives. Reason is the basis or motive for an action, decision, or conviction. It spells the difference of moral judgments from the mere expression of personal preference. For example, if after eating someone says, "I like a sweet cake," he is not required to support it with good reasons, for that is a statement about his personal taste and nothing more. but in the case of moral judgment, they require backing by reasons. In absence of sensible rationale, they are merely capricious and ignorable. Impartiality, on the other hand, is a principle of justice holding the decision ought to be based on objective criteria, rather than on the basis of bias, prejudice, or preferring the benefit to one person over another for improper reasons. Impartiality in morality requires that we give equal and/or adequate consideration to the interests of all concerned parties. That very person is equally important. That is, no one is seen as intrinsically more significant than anyone else.
The 7-step moral reasoning model. Moral reasoning is sometimes affected by emotions, which blind us from deciding and seeing what acts are needed to do, and what is right from wrong. So, in order to decide and do what is actually right, we must do these steps in order to fairly to do an act and not be biased about anything. First steps in the moral reasoning model is to gather the facts. It is the indispensable first steps before any ethical analysis and reflection of the case. It focuses on determining what to do, already know, or the facts at hand, and what you are going to do.
Second step is determining the ethical issues that are the ethical or moral issues needed to be tackled or faced in a certain situation that may cause harm to an individual. For instance, many ethical decisions, especially at the end of the patient's life, can be stated in terms of patient autonomy or someone's right to make his or her decision about medical care versus the sanctity of the life or the duty to preserve life. Third step is identifying the principles that have a bearing on the case. It could refer to biblical principles, constitutional principles, personal principles, or principles drawn from a natural law which guides a person in making decisions. Usually, biblical principles weigh more heavily than the others.
Fourth step is listing the alternatives. This involves coming up with the various alternative courses of action as part of the creative thinking included in resolving a moral dilemma. Though there will be some alternatives which you will rule out without much doubt. In general, the more alternatives that are listed, the better the chance that your list will include some high-quality ones. Fifth is comparing the alternatives with the principles. This involves eliminating alternatives contradicting to the principle we believe in. In many cases, the case will be resolved at this point since the principles will remove all alternatives except one. The purpose of this comparison is to determine whether there is a clear decision that can be made without further deliberation.
Sixth step is weighing the consequences. In case the principle do not produce a clear decision, then consider possible consequences, whether positive and negative, in your chosen alternatives. They should be informally weighted since some positive consequences are more beneficial than the others, and some negative consequences are more detrimental than the others. The last but not the least step is making a decision. Normally, the decision that is made is one that possesses the least number of problems or negative consequences. The importance of will and moral courage. Often, what is lacking is the moral courage, which necessarily involves the concept of will. In morality, therefore, will is essential just as reason is significant. Will refers to that faculty of the mind which chooses at the moment of making decision the strongest desire from among the various desires present. It is considered important in ethics because of its central role in enabling a person to act deliberately with self-control and working towards attaining goals. Moral courage, on the other hand, means doing the right thing even at the risk of inconvenience, ridicule, punishment, or loss of job, security, or social status. It demands us to make judgments about what behavioral acts are supportive of our ethical ideologies or highest ideals and which ones are destructive. Moral courage sounds like, on the other hand, lack of moral courage sounds like. Moral courage and will require us to recognize our responsibilities and be accountable to the consequences of our own actions.
Developing will and moral courage. Here are the tips or suggestions developing will and moral courage. First, develop and practice self-discipline. It involves the rejection of instant gratification in favor of something better. Ethically applied, it may refer to the giving up of instant pleasure and satisfaction for a higher and better goal such as executing a good rational moral decision. Second, do mental strength training. It involves declining to satisfy unimportant and unnecessary desires, saying no to useless, harmful or unnecessary desires and deeds, and behaving contrary to one bad habits. Fortify and refine person mindset. Here are some examples of mental strength training. Don't open the internet for a day or two. Avoid chatting with your gossipy friend. Resist the desire to gamble.
Third, draw inspiration from people of great courage. These include people in all walks of life who would share willpower and moral courage, overcame difficulties and hardships, have improved their moral life, advanced on the spiritual or moral path, and became worthy of imitation. History is filled with outstanding examples of moral courage whom we rightly celebrate, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, and especially Jesus Christ and his apostles. Fourth, repeatedly do acts that exhibit moral courage and will. If one wishes to nurture the moral courage and will in him, he must strive doing the acts that manifest them whenever opportunity allows it. Here are some of the examples. Standing up to a bully on the playground. Picking up litter. Doing homework or course without being reminded. Lastly, avoid deeds that show lack of moral courage and will. This involves evading acts that show irresponsibility, cowardice, apathy, rashness, imprudence, ill will, and wickedness. Here are some examples. Walking away from someone in need. Taking more than your fair share. Laughing at someone's misfortune or accident.